I was a 15-year-old kid, and I remember that day really well. It was a sunny morning, the school was closed, and I was in my garden with my little sister. We waited for our mom to get back from the store so we could all enjoy a pleasant morning together. My mom usually used to pick up the daily newspaper, which I would often give a quick glance before I kickstart my day. And I would often start from the back page where the sports section is located. But this time, the things were different. As soon as I saw the cover, a sunny day turned into pitch black darkness. Who would have thought that 14 years later, I'll be here telling you this exact same story that shook me to the core. But here I am. So let's begin. In 2008, a small town of Amstetten, located near Vienna, became the planet's epicenter. The countless journalists flew in from different countries, wanting to grab the best seats, take the best photos and gather the best pieces of information. But unfortunately, it was for a very sad reason. The reason which would shake not only Austria, but the whole world. When a young 19-year-old girl was admitted to the hospital on April 19, 2008, the doctors had a real puzzle before them. In critical condition and with not much time left, a fast intervention was needed, as well as identification, but it seemed like the girl was a ghost. And when I say ghost, I literally mean exactly that. There were no fingerprints of her, no ID. Her DNA was not in the system. It basically looked like this girl actually doesn't exist. Baffled by this riddle, the doctors informed authorities, but little did they know what a horrifying story would unfold. A man named Josef Fritzl reported the disappearance of his daughter Elisabeth. With already one previous escape from home when she was 15, Josef claimed that she had problematic behavior and that she probably ran away again, and the police believed him given his daughter's apparent behavioral issues. The search for Elisabeth was launched immediately, but without success. The theory was solidified a few days later when a letter with her handwriting arrived, where she claimed that she had joined a cult and that she wasn't going to come back. Of course, there were no traces of her anywhere, but that was because of one simple reason. She wasn't missing. She wasn't missing, and she certainly wasn't in a cult. Because Josef Fritzl kidnapped his own daughter and locked her in a basement below ground. A basement in which she will spend the next 24 years. But why? Why would a father do something monstrous like this? Josef Fritzl was born on April 9, 1935 in Amstetten to Josef Sr. and Maria. He grew up as an only child because his father had deserted the family when he was 4 and never again came into contact with him. He later died in the World War II, and Josef was left in the care of his mother, who was allegedly very bad, often beating and molesting him. The type of behavior that could not result in anything else but the development of a disturbed personality, and that would be a light word. He went on to marry Rosemarie, with whom he had 7 children in total, 3 sons and 4 daughters. It was clear that he had his sick, twisted thoughts pointed at Elisabeth, because even though he treated all his children very badly, Elisabeth was the one he was treating the worst. With a sick mind formed from the early days, Fritzl often went to stalk the couples while masturbating at the same time. His disturbed desires were piling up, and in 1967 he followed and broke into the home of a 24-year-old nurse while her husband was away and violated her while holding a knife to her throat. He was arrested and served 12 months of an 18-month prison sentence, but that wouldn't do any good. He knew he was going to do it again, so he came up with the most diabolical and sickening plan imaginable in order to keep his horrifying urges a secret. And that plan took place 6 years before he kidnapped his daughter. 6 years. He planned the whole thing for 6 years. It all started with obtaining a building permit. Actually, nobody found it strange, and since it was a Cold War period, many people actually built nuclear shelters, and that was his excuse. For the course of 6 years, he was able to build an atomic bunker. Well, that was the official story, but in reality, he was building a prison for his own daughter. After all these years, I still cannot believe how sick that actually is. Since he was an actual engineer by profession, he was able to do it all by himself. Machine construction, plumbing, and electricity. He created a fortress that was located under his house. And it all started from the basement, on which he added the security lock and forbade anyone to go even near the door. Now, a sane person would find that extremely suspicious, but not his wife. He built the first 2 rooms and over the years extended them, adding a kitchen, 1 more room, and a bathroom. He also installed a modern security system, so in one sentence, he made a bunker unescapable. After finishing the whole process, there was only one thing left to do: to get Elisabeth down there. After Rosemarie was absent from home, Fritzl took advantage and asked Elisabeth if she could help him carry a door into the basement. She held the door in place while Josef fitted it into the frame, and he held an ether-soaked towel on her face until she was unconscious, and then threw her into the chamber. When she woke up all confused, she wouldn't even imagine what was in store for her for the next 24 years. While she was in there, Josef went and filed the mentioned missing report the very next day. After the letter was received and there was no trace of Elisabeth, he was now finally able to put his sickening plan in motion. During the first 5 years of her captivity, Elisabeth was all alone, with Fritzl being the only link to the outside world. Now, as wrong as this sounds, I would like to tell you that that was it. she was a prisoner and he enjoyed leaving her there in the dark. But unfortunately, that was just not the case. Due to the reason he was planning this in the first place, he started sexually abusing his daughter on a daily basis. He visited her 2 times a day, in the morning and at nightfall. But the nightmare got even worse. When she was 23, Elisabeth realized that she was pregnant. But the psychopath refused to take her to the hospital, and instead he forced her to give birth by herself. The little girl by the name of Kerstin was born, the one who will end up in a hospital 2 decades later. Then, after 1 year, Stefan was born, then Lisa, and finally Monica. After 10 years locked in a basement, Elisabeth has 4 children. And again, the only link with the outside world is a small TV with limited usage, and the monster who put them all there. Fritzl continued to behave the same way as he was with the children above, and he often threatened them that if they don't do what he says, he will shut the door forever. He still abused his daughter almost every day, many times in front of the children, and made her watch the explicit content to humiliate her even more. In the meantime, his family above still doesn't suspect a thing. Over the years, the children grew, and Elisabeth was forced pregnant again, this time with twins. Alexander and Michael were born. Sadly, Michael was suffering from respiratory problems at birth, and Josef didn't want to take him to the hospital. So Elisabeth was forced to watch her own son die before her eyes. Right after his death, Fritzl took the body and cremated it. But the real problems for this psycho occurred when the basement became too small for all of them. So he came up with another very sick plan. At 9 months old, Lisa was taken outside of the basement and left in a basket outside the door, along with a letter from Elisabeth that she wasn't able to take care of the child. Soon after, he repeated the same process both with Monica and Alexander. In essence, his wife, Rosemarie, was adopting children he had with his own daughter. How sick that is. And still, nobody found it suspicious when the kids kept appearing outside their door. Since he took the children outside of the basement when they were very young and could not remember anything, he knew that he would be safe. And over the years, he did everything with those children, barbecuing in the backyard, playing, swimming in their pool. But that was just a tip of the iceberg, because he often satisfied his sadistic pleasure by bringing the photos he took and showing them to children in the basement. In 2002, the last child, Felix, was born, and he, Stefan, Kerstin, and Elisabeth were trapped inside 4 walls and darkness for another 6 years. All until April 19th, when Kerstin went ill and Elisabeth convinced Josef to take her to the hospital, where the unfolding of this sickening story began. A week later, she convinced him to let her go to the hospital as well to visit her daughter. But since the authorities have been alerted the previous week about this case, they were immediately called when Fritzl showed up with Elisabeth, asking to see Kerstin. They were both brought in for questioning, and it's mild to say that the people were absolutely horrified with the story that will follow. It took somewhere near 5 hours for Elisabeth to start talking, and she only started when she got a promise that she will never see her father again. After they heard all the disgusting details, they immediately went to the bunker and released Felix and Stefan. According to some reports, Felix, who was 5 at a time, was glued to the window of a police car, seeing the outside world for the first time. Ordinary trees, the sun, the sky, all seemed like something magical. Very sad and disturbing on so many levels. Josef was arrested, and now it was up to the police to figure out how exactly he was able to keep his horrifying thing a secret for more than 20 years, and how, for the love of God, the family who was in the same house didn't notice anything. To make matters worse, their house actually rented some rooms as well, so over the years over 100 visitors slept there, and still nobody had a clue. Because basically the laws Fritzl imposed on his family were the same for the lodgers: no garden and no basement. He told investigators that he even switched his jobs in order to have a more flexible time and steady schedule. He found a way to avoid suspicion by traveling and purchasing things in a supermarket on the completely opposite side of Amstetten, so he could buy separate things for his family in the house and for the one below ground. The story was so shocking that it hit the front pages literally the next day, and everybody waited for the trial and for the opportunity to see the monster of Amstetten. Josef Fritzl arrived in court escorted by a dozen police officers and hid his face behind the blue folder. He was charged with rape, incest, kidnapping, slavery, and murder, and he logically faced the max sentence. Like in April of 2008, the eyes of the entire world were once again fixed on Austria. Many journalists were fighting for a seat, but only 100 would eventually be picked to attend the hearing. Fritzl was basically unshakable until he heard that Elisabeth might be present in the courtroom, and by some accounts he did manage to recognize her on the second day, even though she was disguised. That was the thing that finally broke him. At least that was what the rumors say. His defense was something that shocked not only everybody in the court, but also something that fills me up with so much rage every time I remember that he actually said that. He stated that he wanted to protect her from the lifestyle he thought wasn't good for her. I don't even know what to say about that statement. Fritzl decided to imprison Elisabeth after she didn't bend to any rules anymore when she became a teenager. That is why I had to do something. I had to create a place when I could keep Elisabeth, by force if necessary, away from the outside world. Sick. Regarding his treatment of Elisabeth and her children in the cellar, he explained that he brought flowers for Elisabeth and books and toys for the children into the bunker, and as he said, often watched videos with the children and ate meals with them. It makes me sick when hearing this, and it provokes many thoughts in my head, which I would gladly like to tell you right now. But for the sake of this documentary, and with possible red flag that would immediately be raised if I start to count all the things I would do to this psychopath, I should probably keep it light. I will only say that this scum, prick, piece of trash and twisted deserves the worst things a human mind can imagine. I would like to tell you that this story has a sort of happy end, and that the Fritzl was tortured, beaten and humiliated every single day while incarcerated. But the sickening reality is that as we speak, he's probably eating his lunch in peace. And on top of everything, he will be due to release in just 2 years. Yes, you heard it right. This monster will be free in 2024. As for Elisabeth, well, I can only stand up and admire her undisputed courage and strength. The fact that she was able to cope with this horrible nightmare for almost 25 years is more than unbelievable. And not only that, but she managed to protect her children, educated them, taught them to speak, read, and write. Always been a wonderful mother, despite the fact they came to this world in the most unspeakable way. To be able to stay actually sane for all those years and eventually recover is a true feat of an incredible human being. And for me personally, Elisabeth Fritzl is one of the strongest people I have ever heard of.